how to say I'm vegetarian in Mandarin Chinese. 我吃素.
我吃素.
This is Greg from worldsbestvegan.com, and this is also kind of embarrassing, as I'm totally sure to butcher this. But when I went looking online for a YouTube video on the subject, I didn't really find anything that seemed quite clear enough. Hopefully this is just a problem with tags and someone can steer me in the right direction. But for now, here goes. This is a short guide to saying I'm vegetarian in Mandarin Chinese. There's actually no one word for vegetarian in Chinese. The closest that we have is a phrase with roots in the Buddhist tradition, which is 我吃素. Before I start breaking the phrase down, there's maybe a couple of things that I should say for people that are unfamiliar with the Chinese language. Mandarin, or more correctly, 普通话, is the state standard, so it's the most common language in mainland China now. That being said, the most common language in North American Chinatowns and kind of overseas Chinese communities is generally Tuashangese or Cantonese. So this won't really work everywhere, although most Chinese restaurants would understand you were you to say 我吃素. Also, because the script is standardized, if you were to write it out, you could take that pretty much anywhere in the world and they would understand you. That, of course, a Chinese restaurant. The other thing to say is that the characters that I'll be putting into the video will be in a simplified form, and any of the romanizations will be done using pinyin, which is the state standard for representing Chinese characters in a Roman alphabet. If you're interested in that, there's a lot more information in a blog post that I just put on my blog, and I'll try and put some links below the video here. Literally, the phrase 我吃素 means I eat vegetables. In fact, it's more ambiguous than that because the word 素 has a lot of different meanings. It could also describe a plain or a simple meal, as well as foods that were Buddhist appropriate, which it doesn't always mean vegetarian. Buddhist meals may or may not include meat. But for all of its faults, it's also the best that we've got. Let's break it down a little. The first part of the phrase is 我. It's simply the pronoun I, and it's pronounced in the third tone, which means that your voice kind of starts in the middle of your register, goes down, and then goes back up. Say it with me. It's 我. So it's kind of like 我, but without all of the enthusiasm. With the magic of technology, I'll superimpose the character for 我 on the screen. It's written 我. The second part of the phrase, 我吃素, is the verb 吃, which means to eat. And it's pronounced in the flat first tone, which is in your upper register, and it's just a monotone word. I'm so full of enthusiasm that I generally have a hard time pronouncing these types of words, but let's try it together. It's 吃. So you can kind of think of cheesy, as in this video without the Z part, but there's actually a really key difference that you need to be mindful of when you're saying this word. And that's that the letter CH in pinyin orthography represent a syllable or a consonant in Chinese rather that is pronounced quite differently than the way we pronounce CH in English. Sometimes we do actually use CH in that way, and you can think of the word children as a good example. The way that it's pronounced is with a flat tongue up in the roof of your mouth behind your gum line. So it's chi or chi. My CH sound isn't that great. I'll try and insert an expert example here.
吃 吃 吃.
So the CH sound, it's kind of like children. It's almost close to the way that we say the letter J. Where it gets confusing is that another word that you can think of that starts with a CH in English is the word chin. That sort of soft CH that's said with the tongue just right behind your front teeth is actually a completely different consonant in Chinese. It's represented by the letter Q, and QI in Pinyin spells qi, which is, depending on the tone, life force, or the number 7, or a whole range of different things, including steam. So you could accidentally just ask for steamed vegetables, or just confuse the heck out of whoever you're trying to talk to. It's not totally important because the phrase in context is actually relatively clear, but it's something to keep in mind. So again, I think that the way that you can tell the difference between these two words is if you say children and then chin, and pay attention to the way that your tongue sits in your mouth as you say them. And when you're trying to say eat in Chinese, the word qi,
吃
you just keep your tongue up there. So again, it's qi.
吃
One final note about this word, and that's it. I've seen a lot of people suggest that you pronounce it CHER. I think honestly this is a bad idea. The reason for that is because not only is the R sound in Chinese one of the hardest sounds for native English speakers to make, it's also like putting a really heavy accent on your speech. It's particular to areas of northern China, and most people don't actually say qi that way. It's like if you walked into a restaurant, or somebody walked into your restaurant in North America and just was speaking a really, really strange accent, but it obviously had nothing to do with them. Not only would it be confusing, it's also maybe vaguely offensive or just funny sounding. And it can even be more confusing than that, because when I say CHER, I think of maybe cherry or cheroot or share, when in fact, if you want to say it as CHER, the word qi would be 吃. So the phrase would be 我吃素.
吃
Is written like this.
吃吃
I like to think of it as a box of deliciousness headed towards my gaping maw. The last part of the phrase, 我吃素, is the easiest. 素 is a beautiful and esoteric word. In this context, it means vegetables, but it also has different connotations about purity and simplicity. The phrase as entire has its roots in Buddhist traditions, which is where this idea of su food comes from. People might even ask for a su meal when they're not feeling very well, which is one of the reasons that the phrase is a little bit ambiguous. The word itself, though, is really simple. It's pronounced in the 4th tone. You start mid-high, sort of, and go low. I'm a mumbler, and my Mandarin teacher used to whack a ruler on my desk and point at me and say, "Control the sound," when I tried to say this word. She was as amazing as she was terrifying. Sadly, I'm not that frightening, but thankfully I don't think the word is totally as complicated as I make it out to be, and most people will definitely understand you in the context of this phrase. Right, let's say it together. Su. It's the whole phrase.
我吃素
Simple enough, hopefully. The word
su
is written like this.
素素素素
It's actually a really pretty character, and while it looks a little bit daunting, I suggest that you remember the way that it looks at least, because if you see this in the window of a restaurant in China, it means that you struck food gold. It's the elusive vegetarian restaurant, and inside it's sure to be wonderful. So to recap, the phrase in its entirety is
我吃素
that's the way I say it, and this is the way my Chinese dictionary reads it out.
我吃素我吃素
Finally, if you're lucky enough to be traveling with another vegetarian, you can just substitute we for I and say 我们 instead of 我. So the phrase would be 我们吃素. It's written like this. I just wrote a blog post about all of this, and there's a lot more info on there, as well as a JPEG that you can download and print out to take with you if you're traveling. You can find it at worldsbestvegan.com/vegan in China. Thanks for watching. Before I go, here are a few more handy vegan phrases.
我是一个素食者。我不吃鸭肉，我不吃牛肉，我不吃鸡肉。
我不吃鸭肉，我不吃牛肉，我不吃鸡肉。
只要没有肉都可以。
只要没有肉都可以。
请给我2个菜。
请给我2个菜。
请你给我米饭。
请你给我米饭。
谢谢。再见。